On Africa 24 English, the African Union Journal is presented to you by Afric Bank.
Welcome to this new edition of the African Union on Africa 24. In today's edition, the rise of security threats across the continent, regional responses to crisis, SADC's integration ambitions, as well as initiative by ECOWAS and the East African Community. We will also look at the future of AGOA and the career of Alhaji Sadio Ba, a prominent figure in Africa's peace and security architecture. Faced with asymmetric threats, terrorism, piracy, cyber attacks, and transnational crime, African states are seeing their regular forces confronted by non-state actors. This situation poses a major challenge, particularly in the Sahel, where armed groups take advantage of porous borders as well as institutional and socio-economic weaknesses, Sarah Yemele reports.
African states face a major security challenge with the emergence of asymmetric threats where regular armies clash with non-state actors supported by external forces. These hybrid forms of conflict encompass terrorism, insurgencies, piracy, transnational crimes, cyber attacks, cross-border networks, and arms and drug trafficking. The Sahel region provides a striking illustration. Highly mobile armed groups exploit porous borders, socioeconomic vulnerability, and fragile institutions.
We contemplate to develop this continent and create the integration conditions for our countries. We need to silence the guns. We need peace on this continent. We need stability on this continent, and we have a program for that. The conference really underscored the necessity and its determination to pursue the goal of silencing the guns. And finally, the conference also committed to support the reforms, because without reforming the way we are handling our security issue, peace issue, the way we are handling our economic challenges and trade-related affairs.
Security threats cost Africa approximately $18 billion annually in direct GDP losses, according to estimates from the African Union. This figure will reach hundreds of billions if one takes into account the slowdown in growth, the destruction of infrastructure, and the diversion of social funds. Experts believe that it is urgent to restrict armed flows to Africa to preserve the continent's human and economic development. We mustn't remain trapped in global geopolitics. That is, in geopolitics of power, or sometimes, as I always say, in the geopolitics of organizations. If we remain in the geopolitics of power or organizations, we will never find a solution for the African continent. Why? Because the geopolitics of power should only be a support for us. We will continue to repeat the same thing. The first thing is that we must truly stand together as a united front to fight terrorism and not call on someone else to come and do the work for us. That is the real problem facing the African continent. The African Union already has a peace and security architecture that includes the Peace and Security Council, the Continental Early Warning System, and the African Standby Force. These instruments demonstrate the Constitution's commitment to developing a collective capacity for crisis prevention and management. The creation of a genuine continental security pact requires, first and foremost, a shared political will. African states must agree to strengthen their cooperation and recognize that the security of one state is inextricably linked to that of its neighbors.
It's one of the centers which have a memorandum of understanding with the African Union. They do a lot of activities on counterterrorism, and bearing in mind that we have subcommittee on counterterrorism, we have to see which areas we can engage them. We have to focus thinking about the counterterrorism subcommittee of the committee of the PSC.
Faced with asymmetric and transnational threats in Africa, national action is no longer sufficient. The African Union offers the ideal framework for coordinating intelligence, military cooperation, border management, cybersecurity, and conflict prevention. However, a continental security pact requires genuine political will and enhanced coordination to strengthen strategic autonomy and guarantee peace on the continent.
Africa is facing an intensification of security crisis with more than 50 armed conflicts recorded in 2025. From the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea, the threat is spreading and further undermining state stability, while regional responses continue to face funding challenges. Since 2020, these crises have forced 45.7 million people to flee their homes. Details with Catherine Gombe.
Africa is facing an alarming escalation in security crisis. In 2025, the continent was home to more than 50 armed conflicts, accounting for nearly 40% of global conflicts. In 2024 alone, the Sahel and the Horn of Africa accounted for more than half of the 7,555 terrorist-related deaths worldwide. Faced with this complex landscape, responses must be comprehensive and interconnected. Peace and stability is deeply rooted in the deteriorating situation in the Sahel, a crisis that is now spreading beyond its original borders to affect the coastal countries of West Africa. I remember that the greatest instability in the Sahel region began in 2012 during the attack on Agadez. At the time, there were terrorist and jihadist groups supported by the SADC, as well as Tuareg and separatist groups. It was then the instability began to escalate in various areas, from the Menaka region to the center, the three border area between Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso, and now the Sahel and the western regions of Mali. As I said earlier, there are not merely problems specific to the Sahel, as we are now seeing how the situation is developing in coastal countries such as Benin. Benin is deploying certain army units, and there are signs of attempted attack affecting Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Burkina Faso. This means that the threat is not confined solely to the Sahel, but also extends to countries bordering the Sahelian region, including notably Mauritania and Algeria. Africa is currently facing serious challenges. The geographical spread of the asymmetric threats towards the Gulf of Guinea demonstrate that regional security structures must be adapted to a constantly evolving criminal ecosystem where institutional and climate-related vulnerabilities are intertwined.
Where the continent is in serious challenges. Africa confronts a complex and evolving security environment. We are talking about the issues of terrorism and violent extremism. We are talking about the issues of organized crime networks. We are talking about issues of conflicts and governance challenges. All these undermine the stability and development of our continent. These challenges demand a renewed collective commitment of this critical committee.
To effectively support this collective continental commitment and ensure the sustainability of African forces operations, the issue of representation and multilateral funding within global decision-making bodies remains a major and still unresolved geopolitical challenge.
Je regrette que le Conseil de sécurité ne soit pas parvenu à un
I
consensus.
regret that the Security Council has failed to reach a consensus on funding through compulsory contributions. If the AU mission in Somalia does not warrant global support, what does? The absence of a permanent seat for Africa at the Security Council is indefensible. This is 2026, not 1946. Whatever decisions concerning Africa and the world are on the table, Africa must be represented on the Council.
L'Afrique doit être présente au Conseil.
Whilst the crisis since 2020 have led to the displacement of 45.7 million people across the continent, the African peace and security architecture is seeking to coordinate regional resilience. However, external financial dependence and the need for a sovereign voice at the UN highlight the urgent need to rebalance international partnerships in order to ensure lasting stability.
With a combined GDP of more than $841 billion and a population of over 380 million, SADC aims to strengthen peace and accelerate regional integration under South Africa's leadership. As chair of the Council of Ministers for 2026-2025, South Africa seeks to consolidate stability, boost intra-regional trade, and strengthen economic resilience in the face of geopolitical, climate, and economic shocks. Details in this report.
On August 17, 2026, South Africa officially assumed the chairmanship of the Council of Ministers of the Southern African Development Community SADC for a one-year term. President Cyril Ramaphosa thus succeeds his Zimbabwean counterpart Emmerson Mnangagwa at the helm of this regional body. His assumption of office comes at a time when the regional organization is seeking to accelerate its economic integration and better address the challenges posed by geopolitical tensions, climate change, and economic vulnerabilities.
Our appreciation to the SADC Secretariat under the leadership of the Executive Secretary, Mr. Elias Mahosi, for his dedication to the work that he has been given in advancing the programs and the transformation agenda of our community. During South Africa's chairship, we will work closely with every member state.
During the 12 months of his chairmanship, President Ramaphosa intends to focus his efforts on 4 priorities: peace, security and stability, industrialization, infrastructure development, and the strengthening of human and social capital. The aim is, in particular, to translate regional policies into concrete results in areas such as employment, food security, energy, and the resilience of communities.
The measure of Africa's success can no longer be the value of what leaves our shores, but the opportunities we create within them. The theme of this summit points us in that direction: industrialization, infrastructure, agricultural transformation, and the responsible development of our critical minerals are not separate priorities. Together, they form the foundation of a resilient, competitive, and prosperous Southern Africa.
The Southern African Chairmanship is also taking part in the 46th SADC Summit to be held on August 16 and 17 in Durban, with a focus on the ambition to achieve resilient, sustainable and inclusive industrialization.
The relative peace and stability enjoyed across our region reflects the commitment of member states to choose dialogue, diplomacy, democratic governance, conflict prevention, and peaceful resolution of disputes. These are rare attributes in most parts of our continent.
With 16 member states and a population of over 308 million, SADC represents a major regional market. Its combined GDP exceeds $841 billion, making economic integration and trade diversification central priorities of South Africa's terms of office.
In regional news, the East African community is turning to artificial intelligence to train 20,000 young people. The Southern African Development Community is strengthening its response to climate risk, while the Economic Community of West African States is relaunching its volunteer program. Details with Rafael Antolo.
The East African Community in Germany launched the second edition of the Artificial Intelligence for the East African Community competition on 12 August 2026 in Arusha. The initiative aims to train 20,000 East Africans in artificial intelligence technologies. With $50,000 in funding, the program targets students, researchers, and entrepreneurs to develop solutions in health, agriculture, finance, and education, with a new focus on detecting Ebola outbreaks. The challenge is significant. While Africa has attracted only $1.25 billion in artificial intelligence investment since 2019, with 80% concentrated in 4 countries, and possesses only 1% of global data center capacity for 18% of the world's population, the EAC seeks to create a regional pool of expertise. This edition aims to surpass the 3,891 participants from 57 universities recorded during the inaugural 2025 edition. The Southern African Development Community, which comprises 16 member states, is organizing the 33rd edition of SARCOF in Swakopmund, Namibia from 25th to 28th August 2026. This forum focuses on regional seasonal climate predictions. Over 4 days, experts will analyze climate data to help 4 key strategic sectors: water, agriculture, energy, and health anticipate droughts, flood, and other extreme events. Ahead of the main event, an 8-day climate expertise meeting running from 17 to 24 August will prepare the forecasts. The objective is to translate climate information into early warnings and actions. This will mitigate impacts on the economies of the zone and on the region's population of over 380 million inhabitants. Meeting in Dakar, Senegal on 30th and 31st July 2026, ECOWAS Ministers of Youth and Sports adopted 3 major instruments to boost West African integration: the 2026-2035 Sports Policy, the 2026-2035 Youth Policy, and the ECOWAS Volunteers Program. These texts aim to stimulate employability, youth entrepreneurship, volunteering, and social cohesion. To ensure follow-up, the ministers established a biennial meeting of experts and policymakers ensuring coherence with the ECOWAS Vision 2050. The goal is now to transform these commitments into tangible results for West.
The U.S. Senate has extended AGOA through 2028, providing a boost to African countries benefiting from duty-free access to the American market. But Cameroon remains on the sidelines after being excluded from the program in 2020. The situation raises questions about the country's trade setbacks and what conditions will be required to regain access to these benefits. Sarah Yemele reports.
On August 7, 2026, the U.S. Senate approved the extension of the African Growth and Opportunity Act until December 31, 2028 by a vote of 90-6. The program offers eligible countries duty-free access to the U.S. market for more than 1,800 products. This strategic extension benefits 32 African countries, but Cameroon, excluded from the program since 2020, remains excluded.
L'accès préférentiel au marché américain à travers l'AGOA n'a jamais de façon...
Preferential access to the American market through AGOA has never significantly benefited Cameroonian exports. Cameroon is a country with diversified exports, but the criteria for accessing the American market have not been favorable to the Cameroonian private sector, preventing it from substantially benefiting from AGOA. Cameroon's exclusion has not been noticeable fails in trade transactions because there were very few, if any, exports from Cameroon to the United States under AGOA.
Dans les transactions commerciales parce qu'il y avait très peu ou de façon insignificative d'exportation du Cameroun vers les États-Unis au titre de l'AGOA.
In 2024, the United States imported approximately $247 million worth of goods from Cameroon compared to $193 million in U.S. export to Cameroon, according to Census Bureau data. Cameroon's exclusion is not related to its trade performance, but to a U.S. political decision. In October 2019, the United States announced the end of AGOA preferences effective January 1, 2020, citing serious human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detentions, and torture attributed to Cameroonian security forces. Eligibility for AGOA also depends on compliance with criteria related to the rules of law, human rights, anti-corruption efforts, and labor rights.
Si les États-Unis veulent l'AGOA plus compétitive,
if the United States wants AGOA to be more competitive and more developmental, it will have to change the rules for accessing the American market and the types of products eligible for AGOA. Textile and other products are not the export products of a country like Cameroon. New markets must be created by stimulating the development of products that are not yet exportable. This will allow investors to establish industries in Cameroon to target the American market.
De créer des industries au Cameroun pour viser le marché américain.
To understand the stakes, American imports under AGOA and the associated GSP regime totaled $8.4 billion in 2024 after reaching $9.7 billion in 2023. Across sub-Saharan Africa, U.S. merchandise trade reached $56.4 billion in 2025. Cameroon therefore remains a relatively small player in this market, but with potential in several export sectors.
Le secteur qui aurait
The sectors that will have benefited from export to the United States within the AGOA framework would have been the artisanal sector, the small goods manufacturing sector, and the art export sector. Therefore, for Cameroon to benefit, it is necessary to reform the type of product exported, shifting towards inputs in the telecommunications sector or the manufacturing of small equipment, which will stimulate growth in Cameroonian industry.
Créer une émulation dans l'industrie camerounaise.
For Cameroon, the extension until 2028 primarily represents additional time to try to re-engage with the program, with nearly $7.2 billion in export projected for 2024, dominated by hydrocarbons, cocoa, and timber. Cameroon has a significant export base, but one still concentrated on raw materials. Reintegration into AGOA could therefore offer an additional advantage to processed products and help to diversify markets, provided that the eligibility criteria are met again.
Africa Pensions and Investments Summit 2026. The Africa Pensions and Investments Summit 2026 will take place from 27 to 29 August in Cape Town, South Africa. Organized by Pensions Africa in partnership with the Standing Conference of African and Francophone Consular Chambers, it will bring together regulators, institutional investors, policymakers, asset managers, and insurers. The agenda covers pension reform and governance, investment strategies, public and civil service pension funds, digital innovation, and ESG integration. The three-day program combines plenary sessions, technical panels, and an expo for service providers, aiming to shape the next generation of pension reforms across Africa. 2026 Central Africa Think Tank Forum. The 2026 Central Africa Think Tank Forum, themed From Evidence to Action, Strengthening Policy Uptake in Central Africa, will take place from 10 to 11 September in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Organized by the Nkafu Policy Institute, Dennis and Lenora Farisha Foundation, it seeks to bridge the gap between research and policymaking by identifying barriers to evidence-based reform. Government officials, researchers, think tanks, civil society, development partners, and the private sector will gather for keynotes, panel discussions, and breakout sessions, aiming to produce practical, region-specific policy recommendations for Central Africa. Forum for Private-Public Partnership Units in Africa. The second Forum for Public-Private Partnership Units in Africa will take place from 29 to 30 September in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Organized by the UN Economic Commission for Africa, in collaboration with the African Legal Support Facility and the African Development Bank, it is themed Making Social Sector PPPs Work, from Policy Ambition to Effective Service Delivery. The forum will bring together national PPP units, governments, PASs, practitioners, and technical partners to assess progress since the inaugural 2024 forum and advance practical solutions to limited project preparation capacity and affordability constraints in public service delivery.
With more than 20 years of experience in peace, security, and governance, Sierra Leonean Alhaji Sadio Bah is a prominent figure in Africa's peace and security architecture. From academic research to multilateral diplomacy, he has held several positions within and alongside the African Union. His profile with Christian Belobo.
With more than 2 decades of experience in peace, security, and governance, Alhaji Sadio Bah has established himself as one of the experienced figures within Africa's peace and security architecture. His appointment as Director of Conflict Management within the Department of Political Affairs, Peace and Security PAPS of the African Union in 2021 came at a time when the continent was facing a growing number of armed conflicts, terrorism, and unconstitutional changes of government. In this position, he is responsible for contributing to the prevention, management, and resolution of crises across the continent.
Zero tariff is an opportunity for Africa to industrialize. And by that, the member states, we collectively call for industrialization and modernization of our production systems. And we categorically pushed back against the idea of continuing a pattern that we had done with the West for over 200-300 years, producing raw materials that are not processed on the continent, and then we re-import the finished product at a higher price.
Originally from Sierra Leone and holder of PhD in international relations, Alhaji Sadio Bah first built his reputation through research into conflict and peace operations. He worked notably at the Center of International Cooperation at New York University, where he specialized in peace operations and African security institutions. He also contributed to work on the African peace and security architecture, developing expertise that will later enable him to move from academic analysis to the operational management of crisis.
We have 60% of the world's arable land on the African continent. We have the Congo Basin, which is the world's second long after the Amazon. And we have rivers and I think everything that is required to ensure that we have food security. So we are determined to tap on China's experience in terms of technology to ensure that there will be technology and knowledge transfer so we can produce sufficiently in the first instance for ourselves before we then think about even exporting.
His institutional career then continued with the African Union, where he held several positions in the field of peace and security. He notably became Chief Advisor for Peace, Security and Governance at the AU Permanent Observer Mission to the United Nations in New York. This position strengthened his understanding of the AU-UN partnership and multilateral mechanisms for conflict prevention and resolution. He subsequently worked on several sensitive issues across the continent, including the crisis in the RDC and Sudan, as well as terrorism, unconstitutional changes of government, and climate-related security challenges.
If you look at the Program on Infrastructure and Development in Africa that is called PIDA, this is a program that has the full support and the legitimacy of our member states. So what we do here in China, yes, they pursue their bilateral mandates with China because those are bilateral. But when it comes to the continental mandates that are meant to foster integration of the continent, we work together and we agree on a collective strategy in terms of our engagement.
For Paps, his arrival represents above all an addition of expertise and multilateral experience. His career at the intersection of research, diplomacy and crisis management enables him to strengthen the organization's capacity in conflict prevention and mediation. At a time when crises are becoming increasingly complex, his experience with African regional organizations and the United Nations is also an asset in improving the coordination of African responses and strengthening the African Union's role in conflict prevention and resolution.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this edition of the African Union Journal. Coming up next, a new edition of African News on Africa 24, the world's leading news channel for Africa.
On Africa 24 English, the African Union Journal is presented to you by Afric Bank.